ambiguity in it?
Like I haven't taken an official campaign position. Or for the government.
Pardon?
So I haven't taken an official campaign position, so I work for the government. We're just on leave.
So are you doing like the phone calls for the Liberals?
Yeah, if I'm asked.
Yeah.
But I'm
cool.
I haven't had a vacation in about 2 years, so I'm enjoying a nice breather, supporting when I can.
It'll be all done soon.
Yeah, it's a short one, so.
Yeah, like 19 days left, I think.
Yeah, but man, 19 days would be feeling like forever.
It does.
This whole year has felt like forever.
It's only April, dog.
But this April's really long. It feels really long. March just like flew by. But April's here to stay. You ready to rock? Okay. Give me a sec here. All right. Welcome to the Steady Mobbin Podcast. I am your host, BlaqMVB. Over here to my left is
Chocolate Drop.
We are chatting politics. We're moving a little bit to another realm. We're not talking about hip hop just as much today. We want to, bring up topics that pertain to us and things that'll change and mold our world. Today, I have two guests. I have Caryma. Caryma, is it Assad or Saad?
Sad.
Saad?
Just like the feeling.
Cool. Caryma Saad?
You got it?
Okay, got it. Caryma Saad, and to her, was it right or left? Left? Right. I have a gentleman by the name of Gabriel. He is a political staffer with the Liberals, and I thought it was a great idea to bring him in and chat.
Boo, the Liberals. Oh, I'm sorry. I got Tourette's. Go ahead.
It's all good. So the reason I brought you guys on today is just to share with our fan base to elaborate on the different platforms and mainly talk to Caryma about her shenanigans with Chris Sky in the past as well. If you want to get into that a little later on, but just wanted to get you guys' opinion of this political circuit and this time around and how it differs from other elections. Does it feel different to you guys at all? With Mark Carney involved, who hasn't had any political experience in the past.
I thought initially you were saying political circus, and I was...
It is a circus and a circuit. It is a circus, absolutely. I don't want to ask you who off the bat who you're going to vote for. I know who you're going to vote for, Gabriel. But Caryma, do you have anybody you are going to endorse?
I play that card pretty close to my chest. I will say that at this particular moment in time, I am not impressed with anyone. And I mean that so genuinely. Like, I'm considering, for the first time in my life,
PPC?
I'm considering going to the polls and declining my ballot.
Really?
Oh, wow.
But it's also an important election, and I'm mindful of that. So I haven't come to any conclusions yet. In the past, I have cast my vote across the political spectrum, just depending on the candidate and sort of, what's happening locally, what level of government. And right now, I'm just so disappointed in everyone.
There's no lesser of two evils here?
No.
So why is it so disappointing?
I mean, I think in politics generally, the citizenry is played for a fool. I think that that's not unique to right now or this particular moment in history. But what I am seeing is, and I say this based on my experience documenting protests and political rallies.
Yeah.
And so over the past 4 years, I have really witnessed the fraying of Canada's social fabric. And it is initiated and prompted and exacerbated and encouraged by political parties,
Right.
And not just one party or the other. And what I see are people really turning against their neighbors in very vicious ways, backed up by a false sense of moral righteousness.
Right.
And it's gross. And it's gross that the politicians, instead of taking a step back and trying to turn down the temperature, are throwing gasoline onto the fire. So that is the basis for my disappointment. I could speak specifically about, what this party or that party are doing. I will say that the Liberal government has been in power for now 10 years, right? So they bear a different level of responsibility than the opposition or the party that has propped them up, or sort of the players who are there, but, and serve their own function and role, but aren't kind of the key pivotal actors, right?
So what's the message that's missing? What's not speaking to you?
We have this false idea of or hollow words of unity, right? But that's not backed up by actual empathy or listen to your neighbor. Instead, it's name calling, and it is jumping to conclusions about one another and taking.
Yeah, I think that happened more after when Donald Trump got into power. I think that that actually started around then, like in 2016, and it bled over here.
I would even say before that.
Before that,
I would say like the Obama era and the Tea Party.
Yeah,
is how that stuff. Well, we kind of casually were like, those guys are crazy. Certainly, and how they were portraying their crazy was one way or another. But we kind of let some of that fervence off to the side. Yeah. And even though it was quite vocal,
they're a fringe movement. We don't. Yeah, we don't care about them.
And that gets absorbed in some way by some other folks who kind of maybe identify with some other points that they're raising. And then once that we let some of that kind of especially weird and negative stuff kind of bubble to the surface, then it's a runaway train.
Oh, it's even worse. They even say Michelle Obama's a guy. Like it's.
Oh yeah, that kind of tabloid shit that some people, and then Fox News is going to be like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'll never know. I'll know. It's that type of shit where if we platform it. I mean, having small platforms or whatever. Like I'm a big free discourse guy.
Yeah.
That being said, once we let some of that stuff and we continually to feed it, because it stokes a certain meagerness in all of us, right? Like some of it's funny. The meme culture is part of that as well.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's somewhat it's like sugar. You can't have too much of it because it starts to dilute what your actual palate's supposed to intake.
But the Liberals they passed a law about 2 years ago, like
the online harms.
Which one was that?
The online harms bill.
Yes. No, not the online harms. The way that the law is interpreted online, or they got rid of. Sorry, I think Google was supposed to pay the individual outlets, and Google said no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an authority on this particular piece of legislation, so I'll be careful about how I navigate it. That being said, like my understanding is, since they platform, and you're as a journalist, I would be interested in your take, but how these platforms take news and then sometimes aggregate it and change it up and strip it and regenerate, not having the journalists who actually made the news get a profit off of that, and then by extension their publications. That's, you're basically stripping news for money's sake. So that's, the government was trying to interject to be like, all right, if you guys are going to be doing this, let's all cut your change from the obvious money that you're making and spread the wealth.
Well, now it's positioned like, the left is stifling free speech.
Well, and that's the thing. And then and also I'll be one of the, people, it's a big tent party, so I'll wear that cap. But that being said, a lot of us have a lot of feelings about a lot of things that get put out, right?
Sure.
And, I'll say for myself, I often feel like sometimes we need to be more forceful in our opposition when people are saying stupid shit. To be like, no, that isn't how it is. Because I agree with you. We often, all parties, but specifically the government oftentimes, really speaks to the lowest common denominator. Sometimes because things are complicated. And to sit down and explain some things sometimes takes a little bit more time. And that often elicits more questions. And sometimes government ain't taking the time to explain things. They're just like, whatever's the easiest, simplest way to explain something, which is sometimes very helpful, but sometimes for more complex things that need people to get their minds wrapped around something, they need to kind of come back with something, especially when the other side's like, this is bullshit, this is the left stifling voices, when really that isn't it at its
Don't you feel that things have gotten so contentious that people are kind of just dug so deep into their political ideology, no matter what facts you present, no matter what you say, no matter how truthful, video evidence, everything in 4K that you present to them, they're just straight out rejecting everything that is placed on their lap?
Yes and no. some people do that, but then, all it takes is a spark. All it takes is a little bit of change. You'll talk to somebody and they'll, present a certain way. They'll kind of say certain things. And you're like, yeah, but is it really that? I come from teaching. I used to teach in museums. I used to teach kids who have no concept of what a dinosaur is. And then eventually at the end of this course, you'll have an appreciation for the Mesozoic era. That's a big concept. But if a 7-year-old can freaking grasp it, it's not hard for people to take time and educate people. And, different learners learn different ways. And it's up to the government to figure that out. Do we always do a good job of it? And I'll say big G government, period, regardless of the party. Like this is the operation. I like to separate the idea of politic and government, but that's a controversial idea.
Okay.
But it's hard for, the actual apparatus to fucking figure it out sometimes. And sometimes even the parties are not, adept enough to then rein them in to be like, oh, this is actually the best way to do it, or this is a better way to present an idea.
Caryma, you don't agree with this?
We are fully living in different realities.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I say this based on, for example, I will publish a video depicting a scene at an event, at a rally or whatever. People from opposite sides of the political spectrum will watch the same video and come out with totally different conclusions. And both are so sure of themselves. So then it gets into kind of this psychology, team sport aspect of
tribal
politics, right? Yeah. And you have people who aren't as afflicted by that. And some who will say, hey, you know what? I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right. I kind of see that too now. And then you'll have the people who just are there to bicker. And then in the online landscape, it's made even more confusing by accounts that aren't real, right? Or someone who's operating multiple accounts because they have some sort of incentive to do so. They have a mental illness that prompts them to behave that way. You have bots that are truly just AI generated sort of
they can have full out conversations,
right? So and
with each other,
and it's all happening together, right? So it's to discern it, and this is why I warm to the idea of, if you want to participate in online dialogue, like there should be a way to trace who is behind that particular account. I haven't always felt that way or thought that way, and I think there are obviously disadvantages to doing it. And I don't even know how technically that would work, so that's not my domain.
Yeah.
But I think that would solve a lot of problems, actually, if people were not able to...
Like flash your driver's license, put your numbers in there, and...
Right, and I understand why people wouldn't want to give that information to a private corporation that's based in another country and they're a bit dicey in their own ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not advocating for that position right now. I'm just thinking out loud that the fact that we don't know who is real or what is real, and what kind of who's being paid to say what, who just genuinely feels this way, it makes for a very messy, and of course, since COVID, right, since the pandemic, a lot more people have been terminally online.
Yes.
And that also affects how they perceive the world and what's happening, the information that they consume, what algorithm they're tapped into will very much shape what they see, right? So going back to same video, totally different reactions. And often the truth is somewhere in the middle, but also people will put on blinders and refuse to see what is right in front of them.
A great example of that, most popular example, January 6th.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Love Fest. It was, what was it, a tour? And then, you have in 4K, maybe 8K, these people bashing, using riot shields, trying to break in. And I have a lot of political discourse with people. And I find myself remember when Michelle Obama says, when they go low, you go high. And I find that having any moral high ground means nothing nowadays. Because you literally have a person in the United States who tried to overturn an election and was rewarded with becoming president again. So I'm like, what's the point of having any sort of moral high ground? So I'm at the point where I'm like, you know what? When they go low, I'll probably go to the pits of hell. That's how I'm feeling. Because there's no matter what you say, no matter how factual you are, they just reject it.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear it. It's like you said, it's two different realities. And I'm having a hard time navigating it because, I have an empathetic side and, but right now it's at the point it's like, okay, well, I guess, you just got to find out, right? It's FAFO season at this point for a lot of people, and it's unfortunate. And
I'm usually the doom and gloom guy, but this is I think I'm gonna bring a happier, more sunnier. Not to listen, folks. We all have to live fucking together here. You know, we all have to make it out the mud. It's either you go together or you live apart or you die apart. You know, like I feel. Listen, I have to often have conversations with people I'm very morally detested to, who sometimes believe in things that at your core you can't get through. But sometimes you have to get to the work, and to get to a conclusion or something that they often don't see. You have
how
to
do you do
figure out
that
a
if the other side is not willing to even meet you halfway? When a president could say freely, "Let's make Canada the 51st state."
I won't. Oh, listen. There's speaking to that person, and then they're speaking to the 12 people who work for that person. So oftentimes it's diplomacy. More importantly, it's like literal negotiations. I would even call it like hostage negotiation.
Yeah.
Like if the goal is to get people out alive, there's an infinite amount of ways to try to figure that out. And oftentimes because we've been the attrition of so much terrible stuff or what somebody's being inflicting upon you, it is very tough to be like, oh, hold on. We still have to secure some ability here. We have to secure some sort of,
So you think his whole 51st state is just like a deal strategy? Like he wants something in the long run?
I don't know what that guy's up to.
I don't either.
Because sometimes it defies logic, and it actually. I'm of the belief, my personal belief, and looking at the information, like you can't really negotiate with somebody who's not, using logic or any perceived logic. Even when you speak to the people like who work and have to report to him, even when they interpret that information, they often will agree. This makes sense, sure. And only but 24 hours later, they come back on the news and they're like, "Oh no, President Trump has said something else. We're differing from that." So you have to kind of appreciate that we can't maybe deal with this person, but more importantly, we have to figure out what our response is. You can't, if something's acting erratic, you have to maybe figure out, okay, I have to secure my space, I have to look for exits, let's look for the door, or more importantly, okay, let's let this person calm down, and let's maybe figure out a better defense strategy, because it can't just all be offense.
Sorry, just on that point though, like diplomacy is a dying art form, because there is all of this pandering to, or posturing, even the idea of elbows up, right? That as sort of a national unifying slogan, I find quite reprehensible because, okay, I'm not really a hockey fan despite the jersey, but I know enough about hockey to know that elbows up is a penalty, right? So, okay, fine, it means you want to play harder ball. If we look at the geopolitical land, are we really in a position, like, does that make sense? Does that make sense, right? Or does it make more sense to be kind of like...
Benevolent?
I don't know if benevolent is the word, but, and to what you were saying earlier about they go low, we go high, and that doesn't seem to work if the person isn't dealing in good faith. But, okay, so you go lower, and it's just a race to the bottom, right? So, I frequently find myself in positions where, you got to turn the other cheek. And that doesn't mean being a doormat. I think that there are ways to set boundaries or assert oneself that, come from a position of, or a place of strength, but don't necessarily look like force.
Speaking of that, turning the other cheek, you've been assaulted in the past.
Many times at rallies.
Really, many times, eh?
Yeah.
Oh my! Have these people been tried in court?
There is, of the countless times it's happened, there was one case that is still making its way through the system.
Good.
That's a whole other kettle of fish, having to do with
police
and how they choose to intervene or not at rallies. And this is different jurisdictions, right? It's across Ontario. I cover these rallies, and it also speaks to what is happening with people, because everyone's losing their mind. That's my observation just on the street, recording the ones who show up, right? And that obviously is a subset of the population, but it also is a little bit of a canary in the coal mine. And there are, I've watched people become radicalized, and not just on the right, right? I've watched people on the left kind of join a protest and I'm here with my placard for a good reason, to support a cause, and then fast forward some amount of time, and they're committing acts of violence on the street for their cause, purportedly. But that's a very tenuous connection as well. So, you know, it's a lot. And I've also had the experience of being at rallies and not being wanted there, right? Because my camera will capture what it captures, my videographer captures what he captures, and we just show it, right?
Yeah.
It's minimal commentary, or at least that's what I have evolved to try and do. But, you know, people don't always like that. And I've had kind of very adversarial people, but we keep showing up at the same rallies.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we're going to have to coexist, right? I'm not going away. Apparently you're not going away. So is there a way that you know, and oftentimes it does, but not always. And there are cases where that has deteriorated over time and become more adversarial. And there's people who started off friendly and became adversarial. So it's no, like there is no one singular answer or approach. And the tendency, I think, to use a broad brush, which is very common in politics, does a great disservice because, and going back to what you said about January 6th, and this is happening, and they're portraying it as that, at most events, especially large events, there are multiple truths. Like, and that's weird to say. I think we're in this strange sort of post-truth reality.
Multiple.
But, you know, the same...
Multiple truths. Crazy.
And I'll use the convoy as an example because I was there for the convoy.
Yep.
You know, there was no single explanation to what it was or how people were acting or how they made people feel, right? There are multiple truths to that.
Yeah. Some guys were there to free the kids from the pedophiles. Some people were there for the COVID mandates and the vaccine mandates. There's so many things happening during those times.
Some were there to party because they still had curfews in Quebec and not in Ontario.
Wow.
So they came over for that, right? And some were there because they truly felt that their civil liberties were under attack. Yeah. And they weren't fully wrong, right? And I think, you know, it's very easy to mock our political opponents, and you know, a lot of my footage pokes fun at people, so I won't, you know, pretend that I am above that. I try to keep it lighthearted, but you know, it's very easy to dismiss, and then you dismiss, and I don't have to listen to anything this person says. It's all irrelevant. It's all garbage. Okay, but broken clocks are right twice a day. Right.
So was Trudeau out of line, or and his team out of line with the whole freezing of people's accounts and their civil liberties?
Courts have said yes.
The courts have
said no.
Yes.
POEC said that the Emergencies Act was justified. We now have court decisions, including just a few days ago from the Court of Appeal, that said that certain COVID era restrictions on protest gatherings were unconstitutional and exceeded the power of what should have been enforced. And then when you think about something like freezing a bank account, you know, what evidence was used? And imagine yourself in that position, right? Because it wasn't just the high-level organizers.
It was anybody who donated to that GoFundMe page.
I don't know that it captured everybody, but it was a lot of random people who were just like, here's
$30.
Right. And, you know, think about what it means to not have a bank account.
Yeah.
So the people that donated their bank account,
some of them were, I'm not going to say all of them were, but some of them.
Yeah, it was not all.
Some of them were, some of the accounts were frozen.
And how do you justify that?
You don't. I mean, you try to.
It's a little bit more complicated than that.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be more.
Because, you know, given that some of the accounts that did donate to it were of foreign countries, and more importantly, it seems more directed that they were kind of funneling. This was part of the rhetoric that was being pushed. I'm not going to further comment on it, but this is what some of the justification is, that some of this was connected to other foreign money.
Okay.
Interesting.
So now when they're trying to sift through it, because, you know, when cops move, they move very quickly and they're not asking a lot of questions. Now, that being said, as this was sorted through court, you know, there's a lot more jurisprudence on it. But that was part of the justification from my understanding.
Okay.
So elections are coming. Trudeau's gone. looking back in the history books in 20 years from now, was Justin a good prime minister? Did he help us out? How did Canada change at all under his, other than the cannabis?
We have legal weed,
Yeah,
right?
other than the
So I
cannabis.
was going to lead with that to keep it positive, although even that was botched in the way that it was
Yes.
rolled out, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, the whole gray zone and all that stuff for 2-3 years, and
just people being shut out from the industry who helped create it,
Yeah.
Yep.
right? And people who were actively involved in stifling that industry, being the first to profit. So that all is very corrupt in my mind.
like Tony Blair, or was Bill Blair rather?
Bill
Blair.
Fantino.
Julian Fantino.
Fantino,
I think Bill Blair had some interests as well.
Yeah.
It's actually
Fantino owns a cannabis company.
it's like dozens and dozens and dozens of cops and politicians who were staunchly anti-cannabis until and fine, people can change their positions, but you shouldn't be first in line, I don't think. In any event, okay, so we have legal weed.
Yeah.
So that's nice. I think we are
Longer
also,
mat leave. A year. It went up to a year with it under his.
The Canada Child Care Benefit, which
Was increased?
I would say significant increases, more reach a lot of kids out of poverty. It's a thing that's close to my heart. I'd also, I have a lot of feelings about our relations with Indigenous people, and I don't think we nearly got as far as the hope and promise of when it started in 2015. I will say where it was in 2015 and where it is now, despite the government's a lot of fumbled attempts. But I think now however this relationship has ended through the Trudeau government, I think is a much more positive space. And I don't know if other governments at that particular time would have been as ambitious and, a million false starts, but you still kind of get somewhere.
Right.
But I think got in a better place. Now, I don't think it's perfect, and nor do I think it is ideal. And I also think there's a lot of false turns and things we have left on the table that should far be advanced in other things. That being said, I think I walk away thinking of like, okay, there was a noble effort done, albeit sometimes, again, haphazard, but it was done better than I think it would have been done by another government at that time.
That's a good point, actually. All right. Well, okay. So Trudeau was okay.
No, I think his legacy.
Yeah. How is his legacy going to turn out?
I think his legacy, at least from where I'm standing right now, if I'm thinking forward to the future.
Yeah.
And this isn't attributable solely to him, but I would put a great deal of it at his feet, is the polarization and division of our society. And yes, this is a phenomenon that is happening
All around the world.
globally,
Yeah.
right?
Not just
so again,
here.
it's not just him.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking specifically in the Canadian context, I think that not enough was done to try and slow that process, and instead it was it was pushed forward. It was propelled by some of his rhetoric, which was couched in language of inclusivity and very, happy, friendly things. But I think that there was a bit of a doublespeak element to that. And I say that as well, just kind of looking back, and my context is I'm dealing with the people who are fighting each other on the street, right? That's who I'm interested in. That's who I kind of study and document. And so if you're looking at that subset of the population, and even the F Trudeau, right? Like that was not entirely organic, right? There was planned and marketing coordinate. Like it was an effort. It was a campaign,
Right.
But some of that sentiment was very genuine, and based in people's experiences and how they felt treated by the government and how they felt disregarded.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we can continue on a path where we just, that's too bad for you. Like it's just not, we're not going to be able to survive, I don't think, if we continue that way.
So what was the rationale behind cutting the carbon tax in terms of the gas, like before the election.
I think it was not. I mean, I think the initial intention was for it not to be a consumer price on carbon,
Right,
whatever that
yeah.
means. But more importantly, like, I don't know, pricing carbon. Like, if it's overproduction, there's got to be some sort of cap on it, because then it'd be like, runaway train. This is like in very simplistic terms, but
I feel like
the
just
trickle down of companies being like, we're not going to hold the hammer on this, which is fair. I think maybe the government could have been smarter about it.
yeah. I feel like if Justin Trudeau actually did that, like, let's say in January, got rid of the carbon tax when for.
You think that was the issue?
It could have helped him out. Like, he could have been around for a little bit longer.
You think that was the issue? Come on, we all think let's be honest. We think the carbon tax was the problem. I
think for some portions of the population that would have helped. It would have helped his image for sure. The people who are there's people who are leaning towards Pierre Poilievre, because Pierre is spitting a good game right now. He's talking a real good game, because they're they're in the center.
Sure.
And so I feel like that particular issue could have like driven people more to the Liberals.
I mean, I think people don't like the government of the day for whatever reason.
Yeah, just like we didn't like Harper.
Listen, a country's like driving a car, and who's ever driving the car, when you're in the passenger seat, you feel everything that doesn't feel like a perfect ride. You're like, this guy drove out of our pothole funny. I feel like we're missing our stop. He's going too fast. Why is he on the brake all the time?
Yeah.
You feel everything. So when you get at the rest stop, you're like, I don't want this guy driving anymore, no matter how long he's been driving, and no matter who's behind the wheel. So there's some things like every government has via attrition. I think, to your point as well, we are, the Liberal government was a victim of the liberal democracies of all Western governments. This is why everybody's getting, and it so happened that we got in a little later than everybody else. Yeah. Obama's era came and went, and he came off clean, and we kind of forget that he was, the guy who did drone attacks. But he's like, oh, I'm cool. I play basketball. So he kind of left package.
I wore tan suits.
Yeah, like he left package like an image that wasn't touched when, we're still living through the ramifications now from 2016 and onward, right? So even though the Liberal government of today kind of like had stretched till 10 years, there's a lot of things by attrition. I think no matter what the leader of the day would have been, even if it changed, it would have still stuck and resonated, which would have been tough to shake off.
Pivotal point was COVID, though, like with how obviously that was handled. And
it messed with people, man. It was a mass casualty situation. And no matter how you deal with that and talk to people, like a lot of people kind of died, and a lot of governments were ill across the country and provinces and the world were ill prepared to handle that and are still ill prepared to handle that. So it's a lot. All of those kind of trickle from. You can look from education. You can look from healthcare. You can look how people talk to each other. Even how online platforms even discourse with each other. All of that is kind of people catching up after, again, a runaway train when they weren't prepared to pull the brake.
You could have found toilet paper for like weeks.
That's just because people freaked out.
I was one of those people, honestly.
Like, where's all the toilet paper?
I was one of those folks.
It's like, God damn.
I was on
paper towels.
I was on Reddit, like 2 months before it all, like the whole world shut down. And I was watching so-called videos from China of people just falling over, and I'm like, "This shit's coming here! Get this shit together!" So I bought toilet paper. I bought wet wipes for like 3 months.
Yeah. So it's your fault.
Yeah, it's my fault. Yeah. I bought like $2,500 worth of canned food. Like I still have it to this day.
Did you build a bunker too?
I had a little book in my apartment and everything, ready to rock.
This guy's ready for the apocalypse, man. Look at Eli shit.
Great reference.
Is Eli Canadian, by the way? Do we know?
Book of Eli?
No, not Eli. Elon Musk.
I don't think. I mean, I think. He may have Canadian.
He has Canadian citizenship.
Oh God.
And I think that
how?
Because I think he lived there for a while.
School here.
Oh yes, he did go to school here. Yes.
Oh,
and
yes.
and one of his Grimes, like the most. Well, I don't. She's actually not the most recent baby mama, but
the most famous.
She's also Canadian.
Yeah,
most famous,
she's also Canadian. Yeah. And his mom, I think, is Canadian.
Oh,
really?
So
he's Canadian by birth.
But he obviously dad is South African. He has that accent.
That's another conversation.
I don't think we can. Like, I mean, even the idea of there was a politician who started a petition to revoke his citizenship, and like that's the kind of performative garbage that actually, if we stop and think about this for more than 2 seconds, you really want to be able to arbitrarily revoke
that's not the move
people's
right there.
citizenship, right?
I
You
agree.
don't think that kind of idea or policy could possibly ever swing back and
Yeah.
hurt you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most issue? Like, what's the most pressing issue in Canadians today, facing Canadians today?
Facing Canadians?
Yeah, like what do you think is like the main what like when a person's going to the poll on the 28th or 29th?
Or what they're voting for and what's pressing
those are
them
so
two different things.
Sure. What are they voting for? What do you think they're voting for? Like, what do they want? Like, what do you think the pressing? What do you think the issue would be in the forefront of their minds?
I fear some people are going to be voting for, you know, who feels more like a daddy, who's going to be kind of the daddy for Canada, who's going to help protect us against Trump. I think that's on an emotional level what people are thinking, and that's silly.
Just going with the vibes, like
Right.
yeah.
It's truly going to be based on vibes, and like, oh my God.
When are elections not based on vibes?
Yeah. When Trudeau came around, it was all in vibes.
But we can even, when we dress up all these other things about politics, you know, we're like, oh, this person performed well on the debate. I'm like, well, did they really perform well on the debate, or did they just perceive better than the other person, or did they just answer one question that you liked better?
Yeah.
A lot of these things, I spent a lot of time in my early years being like, I'm sure there's a system where we can game about and it's really just how people feel.
Yeah.
It's about whether or not they feel you're competent in the moment. And it's in the moment. It's just, it could be 2 weeks later and it's a whole different vibe. It could be 2 weeks before and they think you're not competent, and suddenly you do or say something and they see you're like, no, that's the person.
So what you're saying is people don't know shit about policy. They're just going off of vibes.
But what makes people feel competent could be anything, and sometimes it could be like you have to. It's like you're going into a game. You have to be prepared for every offense they're going to pull at you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you never know what might be the issue of the day. That when you have to go speak to people, if they don't like what they're hearing, suddenly you're like, this guy's gone, and it could be perfect. But
Yeah,
you don't.
because I hear a lot of rhetoric around immigration, and then that will tailor off into
Housing.
the immigrants are affecting the housing, and then that will trail off into they're taking jobs and unemployment. So it's like immigration, housing affordability, and employment. Those are like the three things.
And taxes. People are complaining about taxes now.
Yeah, I guess taxes, but I agree with you. Most of the time, it just comes down to like
What they're feeling.
vibes. Who's gonna defend?
And because we're being bombarded with, you know, sort of apocalyptic messaging, World War III messaging, right? Like that, I think is also.
Isn't that a possibility?
I'm not saying no. I'm just saying that that's the messaging we're receiving, right? Is it accurate or not? I don't know, right?
Yo, this might be some Book of Eli shit for real, because like a lot of the rhetoric I'm hearing from like the highest position in the land, I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like this is war talk.
I think it was the White House, or it was definitely an official U.S. account that tweeted today in all caps.
Oh, no.
Like, so, I shouldn't say it without getting the wording exactly right, but it was basically, you know, don't retaliate and you'll be fine, or like something like just insane from a government agency, right? So it is a crazy time.
Yeah, some people are saying that he's just shorting the market for his buddies and in suits.
Oh, you mean it's not to bring back manufacturing?
No, it's all
surprise.
That's the thing. So all we can do is be as vigilant as possible.
And yeah, I'm a wrestling fan, is my true passion. So kind of I see Donald Trump as the WWE Hall of Famer.
He is killing it, isn't he?
And
He may actually be a WWE Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
he is. No, I'm not being
He is.
hyperbolic.
He
He's
was on
literally-
WWE.
He's literally in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he
Yes.
was.
Yeah, like there was WrestleManias hosted at like the Trump
It is
venues,
Trump,
right?
yeah.
So he's been with the game from like the 80s, right?
Oh my God.
It's
Like
crazy.
Hulk
The
Hogan was
Trump
at
International
his
asked for me.
right? Like this is all part of what he is, right? So
Yeah,
we have
he's
to
a performer,
understand it
yeah.
through that lens to some degree, right? So there's aspects of it that are, a work, and there's aspects of it that are a shoot. And if you're not like a wrestling fan, there's parts of it that are real and parts of it that.
But how do you decipher what's real and what's not?
That's the fun of wrestling. Except it's not so fun.
Like, is
when
he
it's-
serious about Greenland?
I think he wants Panama and Greenland. I don't think he cares about us. Yeah, we'll see.
But that's what wrestling is, right? Which parts of it are real, which parts of it aren't. I don't know. I couldn't tell you, but
Is this Jag Meat's final hurrah?
I'd be shocked if he extends.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can't speak to it, but it
He's
doesn't
got his
sound
pension. He's good. What does he need?
like he's excited to stick around.
He's good.
I think he's ready for the book tour, maybe. And it doesn't sound like he's excited, like, particularly pointed to get in the muck and...
No, he just wants to go on TikTok and show his hair off.
Oh, yeah, that was a tough video.
The speculation that, like, he's throwing the election in order to support the Liberals, I don't... That seems a little bit conspiratorial, but it would explain some things about, like, the choices that have been made throughout this campaign. If we can even call it a campaign.
It's not even a campaign.
Right?
Nothing's
like,
going
whatever
on.
this is.
Yeah.
Right? It's just
like the Ontario election too.
that was such a whirlwind of
What is happening? Like,
Gonna get and they're actually talking about a tunnel under the 401. I thought that was a joke, and this guy's actually talking about putting a...
where would it start? And where would it end?
Well, does it start in Pickering? Does it start east and go west?
How long? 50 years from now?
This is the thing, is we're wasting time talking about this, and healthcare's still a problem. Like,
Yeah.
this is how
It's terrible.
This is the particular thing that you pointed out, is kind of incite all this interesting fodder for things that are not real, and incite a conversation. Bike lanes. Oh my God, bike lanes are the most important thing. There's bike lanes on like 15 streets, dude. Like, it's actually not an important issue.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, education's in the gutter. What are we talking about?
But like, we're on a junk food diet. I
Bingo.
think you used the example of sugar, right? And it affects your palate. It also rots your brain. So like, we are in a brain rot moment. And maybe people are always like this. I don't know. I only have my current existence really as a frame of reference, right? So like, historically, humans have always been kind of dumb, right? And susceptible to bad things
Yeah.
and just not making good choices, right? But there's also beauty in humanity and, improvement, and we strive for excellence, and right? So those both things are true at the same time. There's this duality. But, in a society of convenience, right, where it is like we can just pull out our phone and scroll for hours and, order an Instacart and then an Uber Eats and like not really have to leave or do any, like, it's just that online element is new.
Yeah.
That's new for us. And we can't really predict what it means or what the outcome is. But it is highly influential.
If I can even build off of that, I was talking to a group of kids about civic engagement the other day, and it was really cute. A bunch of really good high school kids, and they're talking to me about research. What, like, we're researching on this, and they're really, intelligent kids. And then they're showing me the things they're researching, and it's all videos of people telling them the thing. And I'm like, oh, so we've messed up here. We got too far. And I think that's...
Was it TikTok videos?
Some of them, all TikTok videos, but some of them were like 8-hour YouTube videos, which is great. And sometimes if you're an audio reader or listener, like, that's great. Audio learner, rather. But it's concerning that this is kind of the default because it's the easiest thing.
Yeah.
I can listen to a summary of the book as opposed to maybe just reading the book or listening to the book. I'll even give that. And that's even at that kind of like first stage, if that's sort of the thing we're not reinforcing, it's very easy for us to, even when we're looking at policy or voting for people, that we're like, what's the easiest, most digestible thing that I want to hear?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because my daughter, she doesn't even play anymore. She watches people play on YouTube. And I'm like, what the hell is that? Yeah, it's like she'll watch people play with dolls and toys on YouTube. I'm like, how about you? You could do exactly what they're doing, with your own toys. She's like, no.
On one side, it builds empathy early, but on the other side, go play with the toys.
I like to dig into your careers, both of you. How'd you guys get into what it is you're doing? Just the genesis of it, how it started.
I want to know. You're my favorite documentarian.
Thank you. So my background, I went to University for International Development and Globalization, which is sort of an interdisciplinary degree. So I had no real concept of what I wanted to do and just took courses in, politics and history and economics and, philosophy. Like I spanned the gamut minus the sciences and the maths. And then I went to law school. And so my training is as a lawyer. And I am still a practicing lawyer.
Is your office still in Spadina?
Yep.
What kind of law?
I focus primarily on housing law.
Okay.
So landlord-tenant. And then I also have a niche in, I take certain cases in criminal law, in defamation law,
Ooh.
in
My sister would love
relating
you.
to cannabis
Yeah, she watches those tenant landlord cases all the time,
for fun.
just for fun.
Oh wow.
Yeah, something's wrong with her.
It takes all types to make a world, so I appreciate that in your sister. So that's kind of my professional background. And you know, in the starting in the pandemic, I got interested. I've always been interested in different subcultures, and kind of what is it that makes people tick, and you know, how do we interact with each other, and the intersections between media and law and politics. Like, that has always fascinated me. So in the pandemic, from my office, I would watch weekly these anti-lockdown rallies that had a police escort, and it was during the time where really that was kind of taboo, right? Everyone was staying indoors. The messaging we were getting was very opposed to that. So I just got curious. I got curious, and I went outside and started talking to people and, you know, taking some pictures of signs. And then I started kind of documenting the speeches. And then I start to see characters. And this is kind of where Chris Sky comes into it.
Here we go.
Oh, and the other guy from Calgary who goes with him. What's the fathers of the wind or something, or some Muslim guy who's
oh my gosh. Why am I forgetting his name?
from Calgary, who's like,
I'm so sorry.
and he vandalizes everything.
Yeah. What is his name?
What's like
Yeah, you can say.
Dr. Z. Yeah, Dr. Z. He called
Your
himself.
face lit up. You're like, I know it.
That guy has a manifest online on why pathogens are not real.
Yeah. Dr. Z. Okay, yes.
Dr. Z.
Anyway, he was one of many people that Chris Sky cycled through. So my own kind of journey in this, I, you know, was making, or like I would commission political cartoons just on things that I thought would be funny in picture form. And one of those things was Chris Sky at the airport. So I published a comic about him, and I didn't really think anything of it. It was fairly benign. He did not like it.
It was him with buck teeth. Come on now. It's
a caricature. Look at him, right?
Yeah.
It's accurate.
Yeah.
It was a little bit exaggerated. Maybe, you know,
a cartoon.
I
Yeah, it's a
didn't mean
cartoon.
to be
It's a cartoon.
unkind, but maybe I was a little bit unkind at the time. So I will own that.
He's a
Fine.
woman beater, so it's okay.
Oh, wow.
I was being a little bit of a jerk, but it was also objectively funny. Anyway, doesn't matter. I published this comic, and he was upset, and then sort of sicked his followers onto me to go put 1-star reviews on my law practice.
Come on now.
Just like, and then so I was at this juncture, right, where it's like, okay, I can either back away from all of this because it's gotten too much heat, or I can lean in. And so I made another comic, and then just kept making comics and
leaned in all
like
the way
little
in.
vignettes. And I like wrestling, right? So it's like, hey, I have a bad guy now a little bit, right? But in the end, you know, so this kind of moves to me inviting him to kick off a comedy show, because I was hosting in 2020 outdoor
remember.
comedy shows.
Yes.
And this was a lot of fun. So I was like, okay, I'm actually going to do it a little bit differently this year. I'm going to start with a little mini roast of Chris. He doesn't, you know, I have comics. They're going to do their set. I've told them, hey, throw in 1 or 2 jokes about, like, nothing, don't be too mean, but just we're going to have fun with this. Then I'm going to have, my plan for this show was to have a pastor from the local sort of Chinatown community. And I wanted him to talk about his experience in communist China, being in labor camps, sort of his view on what's happening at that moment in society, right? So it was going to be a little bit of substance. And then I was going to end it with an interview with me and Chris, because at this point we'd been building all this heat, right?
Yes,
and
I remember this.
You know, so that was my intention. And boy, did that also become a juncture.
Were you assaulted that night?
There was a blockade. A group of people set up a blockade against me. And following that blockade, they initiated a smear campaign that's going on to this day, that I'm a Nazi, that I'm a white supremacist, that I'm a Holocaust denier because I was going to talk to Chris Sky. And this is all coming out of me being ready to confront him. Mind you, I'm a trained lawyer, right? So what I do for a living is ask people questions and kind of get to a truth, right? So I'm not saying that it would have changed any hearts or minds, but it would have been a very entertaining segment.
You would have cooked them.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even a fair competition, right? But anyway.
No, talk your shit.
So anyway, so then I become a Nazi. I'm not actually a Nazi, but to a certain segment that wanted me really, like, just piling on, right? This was meant to be the ruination of my career and reputation, and I was supposed to be dead from it. And so at this juncture, I say, okay, now I can really just go back and just do landlord-tenant cases and try to salvage, or I can lean into this. So then I said, okay, I can't have Chris Sky at my office that I rent and pay my fine. I'm going to go follow all of his rallies, and I'm going to follow all the other rallies. So I'm going to take my show on the road. Right? You're not going to stop me like you blockade people in sort of, right, with your black bloc masks and showing up with bikes and being punks on this.
Black bloc, eh?
Yeah. And I'd never seen this before, right? So I
That's scary as well.
I was terrified. It was a terrifying moment. But I said, okay, I'm not going to let this end me. I'm going to take my show on the road. I'm going to go to his rallies. If I can't, because mind you, none of them were stopping him at his rallies, right? The only time there was this blockade set up is when it was against me. Okay. So I did that. And I continued to document Chris Sky and the anti-lockdown stuff. And then the convoy happened. And I documented the convoy.
Perfect timing for you.
And I'd already at this point now been kind of immersed in this world for a year, right? And then after the convoy, very interesting, it starts to shift, right? Because now the lockdowns are pretty much over. The mandates, right, are falling back.
Yep.
And suddenly it's all about drag story time. And it's all about kind of gender ideology.
Yeah.
And then I start to say, hey, it's the same people who are showing up, right? It's not all of them, but they're
similar characters,
right? There's a pattern in this. Okay, so now I'm like super interested. So I'm going to different cities, watching some of the same people travel to other cities, right, for these different causes, and then fast forward a little bit more, and October 7th happened. And then it's Israel-Palestine. And so this became sort of another movement. And same thing. There's people who were previously involved in protests. There's new players.
Really?
Right? There's fractures in existing communities where they end up on different sides of the divide.
Interesting.
So that's kind of, now I'm documenting this movement. And
Did you gather names?
There, I have, a whole archive of footage, and then I'm not really interested so much in kind of individual protesters unless they come to my attention for whatever reason. So some people I get names through conversation.
Yep.
Some I get through like online research. Some I get through other people providing me tips. It's not my primary focus, but the micro level of these protests is actually quite significant. And sort of what's happening here, like, we're not special or unique in Canada, right? It's happening elsewhere too.
Totally.
So in trying to understand like what's been going on, I think that there is a broader application to like all of this information.
Is that a polite way of saying conspiracy?
No, I think it's more political movements, right? And the way that information is shared, the way that tactics are shared, some of this is happening online, right? And so my footage reflects the in-person stuff, but online is a whole other
kettle of fish.
Oh boy. And I made a decision fairly early on to not try and play undercover spy. So I've never taken an alias and tried to infiltrate groups or anything like that. The information I have comes by, like I come by honestly, through some people who defect from groups and come and share things with me and bring their receipts. or just things that are publicly available to observe, right? And yeah, so your question was kind of what's the career path? So if I were to sum it up, it's from kind of student of many things to lawyer to
shit disturber.
A little bit, right? A little bit. Although, I really am there just to observe. And I take a fly on the wall approach. And to the extent that I become part of the story sometimes because, people recognize me or want to, start something in that way, or like, okay, we'll deal with that as it happens. But it doesn't shift my focus, which is from like, what are these movements and why is there so much unrest and what's fueling this and which parts of it are organic and which parts of it are contrived and, who benefits in what ways.
And kudos to you, man, because like COVID, like during that time, that was a crazy time. And for you to go out there and all the shit you've been through and like that would scare anybody and that would be it. But you kept on, going out there and doing your thing. So
thank you. I have a bit of a stubborn streak. When I'm told, you can't look here, you can't be here, you can't, say things, okay, stop me. Try and stop me, right? Like,
there you go.
It's fundamentally good journalism.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
I
George,
didn't consider myself a journalist at the outset. At first, I was just a person kind of documenting these
Everyday
rallies and sharing my
documentarian,
footage,
facts.
right? And then, at a certain point that shifted, right? Because then I start like, okay,
Getting the George
now
Soros
I'm doing
checks.
research. Now I'm doing
playing.
right? And so I think that kind of some of the essence of journalism, those principles, already I'm subject to the rules of professional conduct with the Law Society.
Yes.
So, I took some time to kind of make out my own, what are my journalistic ethics, right? In a world where sort of it's bleeding into partisanship and activism,
but how do
journalism.
Sorry to cut you off, but how do you navigate, like, okay, so there's the journalistic aspect, but like then like your safety too is like a real concern, right? So like do you go out there with maybe someone who's specifically there just to kind of look out for you, or
there's myself and my videographer. At times there are other people who are documenting protests who, like we'll look out for each other. We're there independently, but kind of acknowledge that we're there for a similar purpose and we'll have each other's backs in that way. I once hired, it was not real security. It was just 3 football players in security shirts.
When was this?
This was like way early on in 2021. And it was more just kind of for show than anything else. No, that's a real concern. So my head's on a swivel. I try to stay vigilant.
So you get threats? You get email threats like we're going to kill you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I've gotten all manner of threats. I've gotten physical letters. I've gotten emails. I've gotten voicemails, text messages. Because it's public info, right? Because
You're a
I'm
lawyer.
still a practicing lawyer, so it's not hard to find me. I've had people show up at my office.
What?
Yeah, I've had people like I don't really. I talk sometimes about the harassment that I face for kind of various strategic reasons, or to at least put it on public record. I don't talk about the bulk of it because I don't want to encourage it, and I don't want to give undue light to it. Right? It's just it is what it is, and that's unfortunately part of the landscape. I think I get it worse than I might if certain variables were a bit different. But we just one foot in front of the other.
Is it because do you think it's because you're a visible minority as well?
I think that's a component of it. The worst I get is almost always consistently from white anti-racists.
Terrorizer. They call you terrorist and shit.
I get called everything, right? So I'm a communist, I'm a Nazi, I'm a Zionist, I'm a Hamas supporter, I'm all of it.
Yeah.
Right? And everything's my fault also.
Is Chris Guy still around?
I think he's in South America now.
Really?
So he has left the country. I think I win.
Talk your shit,
He's
girl.
grifting. He's grifting somewhere.
In the end, although I still disagree vehemently with a lot of his positions, most of his positions, and kind of the way he just generally conducts himself, in the end, right, I was able to come to an appreciation that we're both human, right?
Yeah.
So we when I said earlier that there's people, it's been very antagonistic, and then, we'll never be friends, probably, but I can say that confidently. Yeah. But, you know, can we coexist now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of what I, like, strive to do.
That's fair.
Good for you. Wow.
When are you going to make a documentary on this, like, the kind
The
of
last 5 years?
groups?
I got to start a Kickstarter,
I
actually.
not even maybe the last 5 years, but I'm really fascinated because you've been studying it, and
that would
you probably
be
have such
amazing.
a live appreciation for what it looks like.
We have so many characters. We can watch their evolution, right?
That'd be great.
If anyone's interested.
Yeah, TVO.
Yeah, look at the camera. Look at the camera and just like, yeah. Just.
This says TVO written all over it.
You know who the guy who did what's it? Drop the Needle.
Oh, he would. Yeah. He would.
Lady.
Yeah.
I forget his name. Damn.
I have his. I forgot his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, I think he probably.
We have the footage. The footage is ready to go, and I have the analysis. So yeah, it's there. It's there. It's cooking. And soon.
What about you, Gabriel? Tell us more about you. Tell the people more about you.
I'm a guy from Scarborough.
Yeah.
First and foremost, rest in peace, Bishop Bagante. You know.
Oh,
man.
R.I.P.
I was playing it on my way over here.
Oh yeah.
I'm a Scarborough kid first and foremost. How did I get involved in my career path? That's a really complicated question. I'm not a big capital P politics guy, even though I've kind of fallen into it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Often fell into it. I started in high school I'm a little younger than you guys, but when the Student Resource Officer program started in schools, when police officers were in high schools.
I was there.
Yeah, it was around. Like I was towards. I mean, I was part of the people kind of mounted.
When did you graduate? What year was that?
Graduated 2013.
Oh yes, okay, a little bit after us.
Yeah, I'm a younger person, but you know, I was part of I helped put together some student groups to be like. And I knew some of the cops, and they were like decent folks. They were like, some of them were just like, I'm just here to drink coffee and hang out.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I saw a lot more of they were turned into like a bodyguard force, and I was like, nah, this shouldn't be happening in school. And I have a smart mouth. I was a smart mouth kid, and I knew enough to be like, there's a way to stop this. There's a person, you got to go to the city. Okay, I'll go to the freaking city. And then very quickly realized, shout out to the Toronto Youth Cabinet. They sometimes get things going. And we had a lot of conversations. We got in a little student group together and they started deputizations. And then a lot of other folks joined in and parent groups, and it became like a much bigger thing than I was like a high school kid ready to support. But eventually we started the ball rolling, and that got me interested. I went to school for anthropology and political science.
Cool.
Which was, I really wanted to be an archaeologist, but you found out you need math, and I was like, nah, this isn't going to check out. Yeah, a lot of it is incredibly, like, it's all geometrics, and you have to, like, a lot of geography, like the topographical systems and math. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm partial to a GIS survey myself, that's, shout out to geography nerds out there. But I loved anthropology. It was like cultural studies. It was something I was really interested in. My research project was in now incredibly topical stuff, immigration force patterns, specifically due to civil conflict and genocide, things I never thought I'd ever find a job in. Now, if there was genocide investigators, I'm sure there's a lot more conversations about that, things I surprisingly have more knowledge about now. I left school and couldn't find a job, so I worked in a lot of kitchens, I bartended for a while, I worked at the ROM for a long stretch of time, which was really fun. Ended up working Friday Night Live, which was a great party for a good stretch of time. And then I had the itch. Now Trump was still in mid-swing. I had some friends who ended up working in the States, and an old manager of mine was like, if you want to kind of get involved in American politics, you can just go down and support, or there's other ways to be more engaged because it's a whole different sport out there. And Canadian politics seemed kind of super white. It just it wasn't my thing. Anyways, I went down there and learned a whole bunch about actually how different their system is, but more importantly, it's far more conversational. Like America, as much as we liked it, the air campaign of American politics, I found it far more. It's just people in random parts of America, just sitting down and getting people together and kind of sorting it out, which I was really attracted to. And I found out a lot about how grimy politics really is.
Yeah.
And Americans have a very different sensibility of from the ground politic into the hyperspace of air campaigns and midterms and all of that, which is about the time when you're I realize that the type of talent that they're trying to bring together is maybe not I don't want to hang out for this. This is not how I drive enjoyment or how I want to seek impact and shit. So I came back to Canada, hung out, went back to cooking, and working at the museum. And lo and behold, a friend of mine was a photographer. He was like, yeah, they're posting jobs for Liberals and like MPs in the area. And I applied to a couple of jobs, just random MPs, and one in Scarborough back home. It worked out well.
Geez, what was his name?
Yeah, John McKay. Shout out to John McKay.
Cool.
Scarborough Gilwood, now retired.
Oh, yes.
26 years in Parliament.
Who's a new person who's running?
Now they've redrawn the boundary.
Oh, yeah.
To get super nerdy about ridings and shit. But what used to be Scarborough Gilwood is now Scarborough Woburn, with a different boundary, and like part of Gilwood is now over.
That's like That's like Kingston and.
Yeah, right. It's just east of Kingston and Morningside.
Yeah.
So it's more like Morningside and Ellesmere.
Okay.
Big Scarborough energy right now.
Yeah. I lived there for like a couple of years.
Yeah, this is great. Anyway, so that's a new redrawn boundary now. Scarborough Gilwood, part of Gilwood's over east by Scarborough Rouge Park. But it was great. Like I learned so much. Like, oh wow, this is actually what government is, and that's really. I was a constituency assistant there for 2 years into COVID, and I quickly realized, oh, there's a disconnect when we think of like what government actually is and what it does. There's a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, there's such a need for, we're talking about the military, and there's a lot of conversation about, our trade with, but when you call your MP, it's about like, I got a lot of conversations about old age security.
Yeah.
And, something's, I have an issue because, I'm trying to submit my old age security, and they said I left the country too many times, and how do we figure that out? Or I've been stopped at the border, and I felt like I've been wronged. I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, this is actually just takes system navigation, or it takes somebody to advocate for you to somebody else. COVID happened. It was crazy. It was handing out food to people. You're checking up on old people, make sure they've eaten. Like it was a wild time. I left that. There's an election in between there. That was crazy. Blackface also happened. That was a crazy time.
What was that, 2 weeks before the election?
2 weeks, 3 weeks before the election, something around there, or 2.5 weeks, somewhere around there.
I thought it was a clockwork.
It was pretty crazy. Being a black person in that situation is pretty crazy. Having the conversations with other people about it is pretty crazy. My point on that is like how many people like their boss at work. You don't love them or you don't like them at all, but you sometimes are like, well, we all work here and you kind of have to keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, it's either him or what was the other? I forgot the other.
Andrew Scheer.
Yeah.
No, it was Aaron O'Toole at that time. It was Aaron.
Aaron O'Toole? Oh, yes.
O'Toole. Which to shoot him some bail, I think Aaron O'Toole is actually like, I've had many conversations with him. Like he seems like fairly reasonable. I have a lot of issues with like, how he's navigated some things, but in relief of the person currently running, I think is far more reasonable.
Speaking of which, what's the problem with Pierre?
What's the problem?
Yeah, come on, let's share it. Let's talk. Let's talk.
To be like super frank, I find he's unwanting of wanting like a conversation. Like if you're in politics, at minimum, you should be a little interested in having.
He's a little too arrogant with.
I don't even think it's arrogant. I think he foundationally has an idea in his head, and he's like, I actually care not what you have to say unless it maybe co-signs what I'm trying to convey to you. I think that's reflective of not having a big team of other MPs around you and supporting them. Like this is a little bit of a team effort. And even though, Mark Carney's running away with the vote, if you see nationally, there's a lot of other people doing a lot of other small things that are big name people. My old boss, Dominic LeBlanc, is like in New Brunswick and Quebec up and down speaking French because you don't even see him in the news anymore.
Yeah.
But if you're a French speaker, you see him all the time.
So it's boots on the ground right now.
Boots on the ground, but making sure you're playing your talent. That's really what a leader of a party is supposed to be doing. People see them as like the star player when in actuality they're the coach and GM. And you should be building up a bench of people to be able to support and win games and more importantly, be able to speak to the actual issues that are specific to government, right, across the board. And I find Pierre doesn't seem interested in that. Even to the, and I'm not to go into like the deep specifics of like campaign stuff, but the reason why he hadn't moved away from this axe to tax stuff, I find if I'm like, buddy, other people are no matter what you're feeling about the tax, people are talking about something different right now. And you're unwantingness to employ people who, there's a lot of conservative people on his bench, a lot of folks. Some people I've worked with in some capacity or another in a lot of capacities. Some of them incredibly intelligent folks. To not have these people speaking in some capacity tells me you're actually uninterested in having them work for you. Or even more importantly, you're uninterested in their opinion to have them employed. And that's concerning. That's concerning as a boss. That's concerning as a person who's going to be running staff around. That's more importantly, that's more concerning if there's other issues. You're not willing to change direction to try to solve it. You just want to be right. And that's not how you always solve the problem.
So I had Maxime Bernier here on Sunday. I had to sit down with Maxime Bernier. We had him come by in October of 2024.
I did see that interview.
Yeah. And this time around, he doubled down on he wants 0 immigrants for the next how many years? He didn't actually give a date. He said for as long as for the foreseeable future, and he's doubling down on it. Do you think a vote for Maxime is like a vote for the Liberals?
Do I think that?
Yeah.
No, a vote for Maxine is vote for Maxine. Whatever you want.
But the thing is, people look at it as he's splitting the conservative vote.
I think if people are aligned with that tells me that you're aligned with the PPC. Not to say that they don't share some folks, just like some right now. There's a lot of people who are a little conservative, but are now decided to be a little liberal. And we share some votes there. There are people who are more left-leaning than us on the liberal side. I'm a very left-leaning person. I can speak for myself. I am a very left-leaning person. I just happen to work for the Liberals because I'm a get shit done guy. If you see my voting record, I'm far more NDP. Unfortunately, they can't get their socks up together. That being said, we share votes on that side. Some people are going to share votes with the PPC on the conservative side. That being said, people very clearly have articulated often that they are quite different in some capacity or another than the actual big CPC. So I don't know if it's necessarily they're stealing votes or shedding votes to one side. You can say that same argument for any other opposition party to the central one.
I feel like Trump has ruined the chances for conservatives globally. I mean, I think Pierre Poilievre, before Trump getting into office, had a really good shot. But now with all this shit happening, I think he's affected his chances significantly to the point where people are calling Pierre Poilievre Timbit. What do they call him? Timbit Trump, Maple MAGA.
Maple MAGA is what I heard too.
It's like a little mirroring of some of his, policies and Trump's and stuff like that. So,
so what are your predictions in this for the election? Who do you think is going to win?
I think Carney's going to pull it out.
Honestly, I don't make any predictions. I've been in a lot of campaigns. I don't make any predictions.
You can't do it.
Caryma?
I don't know.
You have a gut feeling, I could tell.
You have a gut feeling.
I'll say don't trust polls. Polls are made up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely don't trust polls.
They're indications. I'm sure you can.
I mean, after the Hillary situation, polls.
There's 100 more situations.
Yeah.
Hillary is just the most glaring.
The most recent situation.
I don't know anyone who's ever been contacted by the polling. Maybe some people here have. I don't know. But I don't know who they contact.
It's usually people in Ottawa they call.
Like, is it people with landlines? Like, who are you guys calling?
Yeah.
Not me. I prediction wise.
Yeah, just gut feeling.
I think my gut feeling is I'm going to be sad. I'm going to be sad on April 29th.
That's a good answer.
It's a guarantee, actually.
Yeah.
We can put money on that. Whatever the outcome is, I don't know.
You're going to be... What? Did I catch that?
It's
Because I'm always down for a bet.
I'm going to be sad no matter what, I'm pretty sure.
Really?
I think we're going to see a conservative majority.
Majority?
Majority.
If I'm going by, because I've attended or tried to attend all of the rallies at this point.
We'll work on
there are a lot of people, and it's hard to get people out, right? It's actually a real challenge to get people to leave their homes and go somewhere, let alone to wait in line, right? So there is this sort of celebrity aura, which is weird because Pierre Poilievre is kind of a dork, but like
he was a dork before the glasses were taken.
Yeah, then he got the makeover, and now
That's the hair.
Yeah,
the hair and everything.
That's the hair.
But there is that, and so there is an energy of people who want something different, and that's maybe no surprise after 10 years of the same government, right? So I think that is a very real phenomenon that is not getting enough attention, and when they talk in the media about crowd sizes, and it's kind of this dick measuring competition, and right, it's silly, right? The way that's done. But like vibe wise, there is a real energy there in Pierre Poilievre's rallies, right? And part of it is like genuinely hyped up with this guy in a cowboy hat and a beard, and he's like going down the aisle with signs, being like, raise your signs. And like, he's doing the slogans. And so it is wrestling. So that's happening with Pierre Poilievre. The NDPs may not act, like I genuinely, if they get official
Party status, I don't think they will this time around. Yeah.
And I don't think they will. So that's like a write-off.
Yeah. The indication was the TikTok videos.
The Carney thing is very weird to me. I find it very weird.
How so?
Well, I mean, so I understand that. I understand how these processes work. I understand that you don't actually, like, you just have to be the leader of the Liberal Party. You don't actually have to have a seat or, you know, have been elected or ever received a vote ever in any sort of general election for any level of office whatsoever, right? So fine. He comes from sort of a different, but he's, the framing of him as an outsider, I find that weird. I find it disingenuous. I find kind of the way that he presents himself, and not just because of a lack of experience in politics. I think that he's used to giving orders and having them followed. And I get that from his press conferences and kind of his micro expressions. And, you know, so that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. I think that the disqualifications of Ruby Dalla and Chandra Arya, which, you know, sure, they really came with a different message than what any
Ruby Dalla is hilarious,
right? So that whole thing, like, there was weirdness in that leadership race, right? Trudeau promised us a robust and kind of a real leadership race, and that didn't happen.
No,
right?
I really thought Chrystia Freeland was going to take it.
I'm not surprised she didn't, but like it
I
also
think it was a robust leadership race.
I don't know.
I think for 2 seconds we didn't know who it was going to be.
Yeah, but then kind of he did a sweep, right? And he like blew Karina Gould and Chrystia Freeland out of the water in their own ridings, right? Like it's just, and I'm not saying that it's like I'm not making any sort of
it's just
assertion.
So heavy. It's so heavy-handed
It's just
of a win.
weird,
yeah,
right? It's just weird, and he sort of parachuted in from like out of nowhere, but not really out of nowhere because he's always been in the background, right? Like, and today, like I'm understanding that, you know, the freezing of the bank accounts, like perhaps there was some influence in that, right? Like a lot of this, like it's just, I find it weird, right? And that's kind of I just find it weird. I've said that 10 times.
Who do you think is going to pull it out?
That's fair.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Before we go, you guys recently saw HBC shut down, or they're about to shut down their doors for good. It's a staple in Canadian society, and like it's been there forever. And good for good, and you know, for whatever the past was. You know what I mean? It's a staple in Canadian history. Do you think that's a sign of where the economy is going?
I mean, it's not Canadian owned right now anyway, right?
It wasn't Canadian, no.
It was sold to American private equity, and that's maybe more indicative of.
But like, I from the sort of. Like it's
going to be a gaping hole in most downtown cores across Canada.
They just brought back Zellers, and now it's like all gone. And their liquidation sales aren't even real liquidation sales. So it's like, if you're going to go out of business, at least let us have something from it, right? I think there's a lot of sort of Canadiana heritage, iconic stuff that is just disappearing.
Yeah.
And so we add this to the list.
Yeah.
I think we should be critical of why it's disappearing. And it's not necessarily like our
Amazon.
Yeah, it's not our consumer, like, oh, we gave up on Zellers or anything.
Yeah, no.
I think a lot of these things are brought into places and they were kind of meant to fail. Like they weren't maybe properly logistically laid out. So they weren't going to last very long unless there was going to be a little bit of a bottom dollar, like a big rebound, which was never going to happen. Mm-hmm. Hudson's Bay is like a particular example. Like there's a whole bunch of American restaurants that have gone belly up that were pretty successful, and then private equity came in, bought them out, and gutted them. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good example of that. It's a good canary in the coal mine, to steal a point from you, Caryma. That if we're not careful with what the other Canadiana stuff that we like to, appreciate, but anything that we have in Canada that we like, that if we keep kind of selling out like that, it's only going to like not exist. It doesn't have our inherent interests in mind.
Okay, I guess that's it. We can be here for hours, but it's getting kind of late.
One question, Caryma. I've been squatting in his house for about 3 months, and I don't want to leave, but he's telling me to leave. Do I have a case?
Is he the owner?
Yes.
Do you share a kitchen and washroom?
Well, I use a washroom.
Or washroom.
I use a washroom. He tries to come in.
But do you use the same facility?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So he could call the cops at any point in time. Okay. So what you do is you call me. And we'll figure something out.
All right, this is Black Mob having the conversations with people you can talk to. And
Chocolate drop.
his name is Glory. And this is Steady Mobbin. Way out, baby.
West Side.
Bang, bang, bang. Music is, there's a couple of emotions. Yeah, food creates emotion because when you're hungry, you want the food that you want. Friends create an emotion because when you go and you hang out with your friends, and you go and have a good time with your friends. And especially if they're your old friends, so they have history on you for time. But music, why do you think all these older people sit there and still listen to 70s classic rock? Because they remember where they were on that moment when that song was playing. And they remember, because I remember the first time I ever heard Who Shot Ya from Biggie Smalls.
I love that track.
Yeah, is that audio fucking good on that? We'll fucking wing it. We're gonna wing it.